So, thank you again, and we look forward to see you in the panel later today. Now we move on to Mikko Hypponen, CRO from S-Secure, who will give a talk about the government as malware authors. We're of course also very pleased that you took the time to visit us today, and we look forward to hear your speech.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks, Bruce. Always great to hear your stuff. My advice is never trust a guy with a ponytail. Especially a security guy with a ponytail. So I'll speak partially about the same things as Bruce did, but partially about things that he didn't. Things that aren't directly connected with global wholesale surveillance, but are connected to the fact that governments are one of the main sources of attacks that we see today. Not just the intelligence agencies, it's also the law enforcement, it's also the military. For the last year, we've mostly been speaking about intelligence agencies doing wholesale blanket surveillance, doing active attacks against foreign citizens, doing exploiting, doing backdooring, and doing weakening of crypto algorithms, but it goes way beyond that. And of course, I'll be looking at this from the viewpoint, from the Nordic viewpoint. Like, what does this really mean to us here in the Nordics? To you here in Denmark, to us in the Nordic countries. So governments as sources of attacks. Basically, governments writing viruses. And the whole notion is sort of ridiculous. Like, really? Governments writing viruses? But of course, today, in 2014, we take that for granted. We know it happens. We've learned a lot about it just recently. But this is a very recent phenomenon. Let's think about the history of the Internet. The Internet was invented in the 1960s by the US military, but it really became commonplace and accessible with the web. So how old is the web? Well, the web, it really had its 25th anniversary last year, which is when the protocol was invented by Tim Berners-Lee, but really for us users, the web is 20 years old. Most of us visited a website for the first time in 1994. If you go back and look at your notes, that's when you first time installed NCSA Mosaic, or maybe Netscape, and started surfing the web. We started our website in April 1994, and when we started our first website, we were the 17th website in Finland. There were 16 sites before us, mostly universities. So web is 20 years old. And when the web came around, people started using and accessing the Internet. And the powers that be ignored it. Of course they did, because it was yet another technological development which didn't really seem very important, which was only interesting to geeks and nerds. But it became much bigger than that. Eventually normal people started using it. Normal people, not just us geeks, but normal people wanted to buy a computer in their house so they would surf the web. Like normal grandparents would want to have a computer, which was really a revolution. And it happened because of the web. And that meant that eventually the powers that be realized that this Internet thingy is actually important. It actually shapes opinion. People actually use it and need it and make up their mind based on things they see online. So eventually, maybe 10 years after the web came commonplace, the powers that be, the governments, the politicians realized that the Internet is actually a big deal. And now, they're totally trying to control it the best they can. And this is happening everywhere in the world. This is part of why we saw the fight over control of the Internet last year. You might remember the big news headlines about the IPU meetings in Dubai and trying to decide who's really in charge. And this is also illustrated by the fact that, yes, governments are writing viruses today. Governments are developing malware. Governments are deploying exploit kits. Governments are investigating vulnerabilities to be able to gain access to systems. governments are creating backdoor and Trojanized software and backdoor and Trojanized hardware. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this would have been science fiction. 10 years ago, we would read about notions like cyber war. And what cyber war would have meant to people 10 years ago or 15 years ago would be something like really science fiction, some kind of technological warfare. Or maybe, robots fighting other robots, Terminator 2 or something like that. But as we slowly learned, cyber war isn't this. Cyber war doesn't even mean like technological warfare, like warfare with drones and stuff like that. Cyber war, when we will see it for real, which we really haven't seen yet, but when it will happen, it will be completely invisible. It will be something that you can't see or touch. And when I was thinking about these things, I did a little bit of background study. And what really opened up my eyes about how, especially the United States, is in control of the cyber war movement and for using the internet for surveillance purposes, it really comes from their military might and their military budgets. So the US has by far the largest military spending in the world, by far. That's clear. But what opens eyes even better is looking at the amount of countries in the world which have military bases inside other countries. The superpowers that are big enough to actually have their own military bases inside another sovereign country. For example, Russia has these. They have 12 bases in other countries, including 3 bases inside Ukraine, as we've seen in the news lately. So Russia is a superpower, big enough to have military bases inside other countries, as does UK. They have also 6 bases inside other countries. Then we have countries like France and Turkey and India. But when you add United States to the picture, United States has 700 military bases inside other countries. And that really puts things into perspective. US military spending is massive. The amount of money they throw into running military bases in other countries is in the billions. And part of that budget gets trickled down to the things that we care about, the things in cyberspace domain. This of course also means that the United States has a military base in Denmark, or I don't know if you count Greenland really as part of Denmark, but of course they have a Thule base in Greenland, which I'm not sure if it still is a nuclear base, but it used to be. The United States used to have nuclear weapons in Denmark. Also, they used to have them in Italy. I believe they don't have them in Italy anymore either. They still have nuclear weapons inside Germany. So the investments these guys put into their might is ridiculous. And part of that is used to do cyber offensive action. And that means, like Bruce described, we are in a surveillance state. The internet that we have all been building, the internet which changed the world, has turned on its head, and now it's being used to monitor us, the people, the citizens. And it's more effective mechanism of monitoring people than anything George Orwell has ever imagined. If you go back and reread 1984 from George Orwell, the worst things that he could describe as ways of monitoring the citizens were like two-way televisions, where the television would watch you when you watch TV. And of course we have those today. You go and buy a Samsung or an LG TV, it actually has a camera. It actually can watch you. Xbox can watch you while you play a game, even watch you while you turn off the thing. So we've gone way beyond that. We have everything that Orwell described, and we have much more. And this is really disappointing, because we didn't build the internet for this. We didn't build the internet to be used as a massive surveillance apparatus, but that's exactly what it's being used for today. And this matters because we are very honest with the internet. You can easily see this by going to Google and making searches, and when you start typing in a couple of letters, Google will fill in the search and show you alternative searches that you might be trying to type in. These are searches that other people have done before you. Common searches that other people have done before you. So for example, when people are wondering whether they should tell their girlfriend or wife that they've cheated, they actually go and ask Google. And that's a great example how honest we are with the internet. When we go to the internet, especially when we go to search engines, we don't lie. We don't beauty anything around. We type exactly what we mean, exactly what we think. We're more honest with search engines than we are with our spouses or with our families or with the closest people that we have. And that means search engines, as well as the intelligence agencies that gain access to what we're searching for, know us better than anyone else. And they can keep this information and store it forever. Like, who the hell searches for rash on my son's genital area? But someone did. And this is powerful, because you show me your search history, and I will immediately find something embarrassing or incriminating from there. And whoever holds this information can twist our arms. They can twist our arms today, or if they save the data, they can twist our arm a decade from now. And that's why it's problematic. Keeping information that we think is private. And there are different kinds of problems. Of course, there's lots of information that we aren't even trying to keep private. People are sharing a surprisingly large amount of information about themselves online and social media. People tweet about what they're eating, they put on Facebook where they're traveling, they put their real address online, they put their pictures, their name. All these things that really weren't there when the internet came around. When the web came around 20 years ago, everybody had an alias or nicknames. We weren't using real names online. That would be stupid, that would be dangerous. Today we do. I mean, something changed. But of course the Facebooks and the Googles are completely different things than the intelligence agencies. Because the Googles and the Facebooks, they're not our enemies, they're not trying to hurt us. They're just trying to gain as much information about us as they can without making us too angry about it. Because if we become too angry, then we would leave. And if we leave their service, then they make no money at all. And money is the key issue with Google and Facebook. For example, Google is not a search engine company. Google is not a search engine company. It's the world's largest advertisement agency. That's what they do. They have also a search engine, but that's sort of like a side story, and all the other services they run. The real thing they do is ads. And to be effective in providing ads, you have to profile people. So Google runs data centers in tens of countries around the world. They have one large data center actually in Finland, right next to the Russian border. And if you look at the money they put into their data servers, it's ridiculous. Just the electricity bill for Google data servers or data centers is in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Just the electricity. Now that's ridiculous, because I mean these services are free. You never pay nothing to use Gmail or Google Maps or watch videos on YouTube or search on Google. It's free. So you would think that when you have a company which has this massively large operation, which is free to use, you would think that a company like that would not be profitable. You would think that that would go bankrupt. But Google isn't going bankrupt. Google's last year revenue was 60 billion with a B. 60 billion US dollars. That's their revenue. Their profit, 17 billion US dollars. 17 billion in profit. Just to put that into perspective, Nokia mobile phones was sold to Microsoft for 5 billion. Google made profit last year, 17 billion. Another way to put that into perspective, we all use Google. I challenge you, every single one of you uses Google some way or another. Google has roughly 1 billion users. So if their profits last year were 17 billion, that means every single one of you made $17 of profit to Google. You made $17 to Google. You made $17 to Google. You never paid a cent in money, yet you made them $17 of profit. It's a remarkable machine they run. But like I said, Google and Facebook and now all the other companies who are providing these free services, which of course are not really free, they're not our enemies. They're not trying to hurt us. They're doing nothing illegal. They just want to gather as much information about us as we have. But remember this, there is no free lunch. There is no free search engine. There are no free cloud services. There are no free apps. The only exception would be completely open source projects. But most of the stuff that you see, which claims to be free, isn't. Yet today, still today, in 2014, there's no free lunch. So all the revelations from Snowden have really opened up our eyes. Our eyes are open again after being asleep for quite a long time. Because we had this utopia where we thought we were living. When the web came around, it seemed like the internet had no borders. It seemed like it was like one world. It didn't matter where in the world these services were. You just click away. You click there, you go to a Danish website, to a Swedish website, to a UK site, to an American site. This site might be in Japan. Who cares? No borders, no distances, no geography. One world. Utopia. That's what it felt like. And now we've learned that we were dreaming. That wasn't actually true. There are borders. The borders still matter. And it also means that the companies which have been implicated in these leaks, including the PRISM leaks, companies like Microsoft, Yahoo, Facebook, Google, and so on, most likely they are victims themselves as well. And that's a really interesting twist of things. Because suddenly it means that companies, Silicon Valley-based companies, largest software companies in the world, who used to worry about criminals, and who used to worry about foreign governments hacking into their systems, now they have to worry about their own government. One of their main enemies now is their own government. And at the very same time, for example, for Microsoft, their single largest customer is the US government. So their single largest customer is their worst enemy. Really complicated scenario. You can sort of imagine, Microsoft CEO having a conference call with the US president about, it's nice to have you as a customer, but could you please stop hacking our systems? It's like, how do you even start fighting problems like this? So Snowden is a powerful man. He actually was yesterday on stage in Vancouver at the TED conference. TED 2014 started yesterday. And yesterday morning, the first presentation, started by Chris Anderson, the guy who runs the TED conference, is coming on stage, speaking about the NSA leaks and introducing their first speaker, Edward Snowden. And they opened up the curtain, and this guy came in, who was Edward Snowden, but of course Edward Snowden is really in Moscow, so they had this rolling robot, which had a screen at the height of your face, and it was actually being controlled remotely by Mr. Snowden from Moscow. So he would actually walk around the stage and look at the audience, and look at the slides, and speak with Chris Anderson. Really weird. You can actually watch this online if you go to TED.com, TED.com. There's a video which was published about this talk. Remarkable notion. So we've learned quite a bit about what's going on. We've learned about the US capabilities, we've learned about the capabilities of the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. That's the 5 eyes that Bruce mentioned. Bruce also mentioned expanded versions of these partnerships with intelligence agencies. So the expanded version of 5 eyes, which are the English language speaking intelligence agencies. The next step is 9 eyes. 9 eyes, which includes the Netherlands, France, Norway, and Denmark. So you're part of 9 eyes. The next version is 13 eyes, which then includes Germany and Sweden, and a couple other countries. But they're basically, you're better buddies with the NSA than Sweden is. Your intelligence agencies are better buddies with the NSA than they are, for example, with the Swedish FRA. But it's sort of ironic that when Snowden revealed how United States government is spying on the whole rest of the world, the thing that the United States government does is that they go and charge Snowden with spying. Which is sort of ironic, right? You show the world that these guys are spying, and as a retaliation they charge you for spying. And I don't know what's going to happen with Snowden. I guess the best case scenario would be that he continues revealing worse and worse stuff until he really reveals something so bad that the US people will forgive him and will welcome him back to his home country. I'm not really holding my breath waiting for that, but like I said, that's the best case scenario. So Snowden is powerful. Not as powerful as this man though. I've got to tell you, I am disappointed in President Barack Obama. I guess we all had high hopes for the man. Thought he was going to change something. Well, at least in this regard we were wrong. I'll tell you, I'll never vote for the guy again. But I am following what he's speaking about, and he has mentioned the cyber elements multiple times in his speaks. He has given long talks about the surveillance problems, and overall about the technical capabilities of the United States. One thing which a snippet I actually saved from the White House Twitter feed was that in one speech Obama was proudly speaking to a US audience, explaining how 6 years ago only 5% of the smartphones on the planet were running on an American operating system. Today, 80% are running on an American operating system. Excellent. Excellent news for them. Pretty bad news for us, because that means that our data is now in the hands of Americans. And we have to remember, when the NSA or other US intelligence agencies are accessing our data, they're doing nothing illegal. They are breaking the law, because they have a legal right to look at the data of foreigners when that data goes through the United States or uses American services. American services like iPhone iOS or Google Android or Windows Phone or so on. And reading the data of foreigners doesn't sound too bad until you realize that I'm a foreigner and you're all foreigners. And we all use US-based services all the time. Really, all the time. So that's the piece of evidence which proved that the US government had been listening to the phone calls of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, which was pretty big news a couple of months ago. But when we think about this a little bit deeper, this actually isn't problematic. Not as problematic as it was made to look like. NSA does targeted espionage, and then it does wholesale espionage, or wholesale surveillance. Targeted espionage is when there's a named party that they're interested in, such as Chancellor of Germany. And I don't really have a problem with that. Because that's basically what surveillance agencies and intelligence agencies are supposed to be doing. Doing intelligence gathering on interesting parties, like heads of state of enemy states. So, for example, if the US government wants to listen into the phone calls between the leaders of Iran, I don't really have a problem with that. Or if they want to read the emails of generals inside Syria, I don't really have a problem. I do have a problem if they want to collect text messages and location information of my mother. That is problematic. So two different things. Targeted espionage, which has a logical reason for it, and then fishing expedition, collecting everybody's traffic just because they can. Just because it's technically possible. And just because something is technically possible doesn't make it right. And it isn't right, it's wrong. Another notion that we've learned from the Snowden leaks is that when NSA has an intelligent target, somebody that they are interested in following, they follow him, and then of course they pay extra attention to a person like that. So he gets extra scrutiny. His email might actually be read by a real human being instead of just collected for future use. But they don't just focus on him, they also focus on whoever he communicates with. But they don't stop there. Then they follow whoever these people communicate with. And then one more hop to who these people communicate with. And this is one of the restrictions Obama has already put in place. He has restricted this from 3 hops to 2 hops. So if there's a suspect, everybody connected to him and everybody connected to these people get connected and be under extra scrutiny. And I tweeted something about this on Twitter, and I immediately got a reply from Jacob Applebaum, who works with WikiLeaks, thanking me for lending him a cup of sugar. Which of course means that now we are connected. Thank you very much, Jake. And of course that means that I am under extra scrutiny. And like Bruce mentioned, our location information indicates to the Danish operators that we are all in the same room right now, which makes you connected to me. So sorry. For the record, I never lent Jacob a cup of sugar. So it seems that the United States is treating the internet like it would be one of its colonies. And we, the foreign users of the internet, should treat the Americans as our masters. That's a pretty drastic situation. But it does highlight the fact that the United States is on the wire. They, of course, invented the internet. And all the main servers that we use are physically in the United States. Other countries which would be in position to do wholesale surveillance like them, like China and Russia, are probably very, very envious to Americans because of their unique position. China can never do as wholesale surveillance on the rest of the world as the United States can, neither can Russia. The United States can and does use their capability because the United States is on the wire. Big part of our traffic is going through them. And for one, we can blame ourselves for that. We Europeans. This is our failure. Why? Well, an easy test. Name 5 large American software companies or internet companies. That's not very hard at all. Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon. There's 5. Easy. Then repeat the same with European companies. Name 5 large European internet companies or software companies as large as those. Anybody? Does anybody have any ideas? Well, there's one. That's SAP. From Germany. SAP is large. It's comparatively big enough to be in the same league as with those guys. But this is a list of the 100 largest European software companies. SAP is as large as the 10 largest companies together. And when you look at the top 10, one thing you realize is that you've never heard of these companies. You've never heard of Sage or Hexagon or Asseco Group or Datev or Wolters Kluwer. Which highlights my point. Europe has no software industry. We have no internet companies. We have spectacularly failed in trying to compete with Microsoft and Google and Facebook and all the other ones. This is our failure. When we have the rare success stories in Europe, like Skype or like Nokia mobile phones, they typically end up being sold to Americans. And the Americans never sell any interesting technology to Europe companies. That never happened. Even worse, when we have smart young people who have great ideas and who want to start up new companies, the first thing they do is that they move to the Silicon Valley. And then they start their companies in the United States. I'll give you 2 examples of companies started by immigrants. WhatsApp, which was sold for $16 billion to Facebook, started by Ukrainian. Google, started, well, 2 founders, one of them Russian, one of them American. So one news piece which was in the headlines 2 weeks ago is that EU wants to fight this problem by having a new cable from Europe straight to Brazil, bypassing the United States of America. Right now all the traffic between Brazil and the EU goes through the United States. So this would bypass it. Is this a good idea or is it a bad idea? Well, it's a good idea. Obviously, it's not going to solve the problem. It's not like that NSA would be completely incapable of listening to the traffic on that cable. They will be able to do that. But I'm all for any new connectivity in the world. The more fast fiber optic cable we have connecting different continents, the better it is for everybody. It's faster, it's more durable, it's more resistant to problems. And at the very least, it makes it now illegal for the United States authorities to tap that